right, I think we can start. Thank you guys for joining this section today. And before I start, my name is Hamid Abdulaziz, and I'm an MVP business applications, and I'm currently working as a Azure Shift Manager at Ascension. And today's section is going to be based on the securing the Power Platform with Azure Function with Azure API Management, and it's been contending discussions around how do I secure my API or Azure Function, and one of the things to secure your function endpoints and to Dataverse is API management, which Habib is going to talk about today. And then in this section, we're going to explore how the Azure API management act to as a protective gateway between the Power Platform and Azure, and ensuring that Dataverse and Azure Functions are accessed securely and efficiently within the other web page or within your function as well. And today we're going to walk you through that, and I have an expert in this area who is going to talk about this particular topic. And then his name is Habib. Habib is MVP in Azure areas, and also he has been working with Power Platform for many years now as well. And then majorly his focus area is still in Power Platform as well. But he's has been working around also infrastructure around the Azure infrastructure, and also in terms of integrations with from Dataverse to other platform as well. So it's an expert in this area, and it's going to talk about this. And today, I think he's currently having a technical issue with his camera. He's not going to show up with his camera, so I believe he's going to show us hands-on on this, and he's going to explain to us, what the Azure API management means, and so on and so forth like that. And over to you, Habib.
Hello. Hello, everybody. Am I clear enough? Maybe one person can confirm.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Ahmed, for the generous introduction. You already described me more than I could, with all of the hypes and stuff, and that's why I was laughing. But yeah, I think you've said the basics, the most rather. And my name is Habib, and I currently work with Avanade as a consultant, doing Power Platform and Azure integrations as my focus. And yeah, I'm Microsoft MVP for Azure, and just one of those passionate community active contributors. So one of my mantra is that community works. It takes a child, it takes a village to raise a child, and I think it's applicable to we as professionals, and that's why we must always do sessions like this to interact. And most especially, I would want to learn from every one of you, because I believe everyone has a lot to contribute, their own unique set of experience. And as you know, as technology, there's a lot of case studies in technologies when you're using technology stack, and you can have case studies that are so very, very different from each other and do not require the same approach. That's why in this case, we are also talking about specific tech stack, Azure Functions, and Power Platform, and Azure API Management. These are three different things, and people from different backgrounds can actually be interested in them. But but the essence of this particular session is to address a particular enterprise integration scenario that is very, very common in the business world today. And the whole idea for today is how to secure Power Platform to Azure Functions with Azure API Management. Okay, so and the first thing I would like to say about this topic is that The idea is you are not going to be interacting with Power Platform directly via Azure API Management, okay? But the Azure function in this case will be the middle ground, or the connector whatsoever that will be used to interact, to connect these two systems, okay? And which is usually enough in most systems. In most implementations, you can have Azure functions exposing APIs to Power Platform, which is very, very awesome, very, very good. But we are taking it further to extend something with Azure API. Okay, so I'm going to let you. I'm going to let us start with the next session, next slide. It's okay, pretty much very straightforward slide today because it's Azure API and what is. We're going to look at some demos in Azure Portal to describe, explain some of the important concepts and see how these things work. Because basically, it's going to be an introduction session, level. So just to expose us to what are the possibilities of API. How can we apply this API thing to our projects and to understand what we can do with it. Then, of course, Q&A to interact, and any one of you would love if everyone shares something, one or two things from their own experience, or ask interesting questions that we can even take back as case studies. Okay. So what is APIM to start with? So APIM itself is Azure API Management, okay? Application Programming Interface. The same API that we all know is still the same thing. Yeah, because it's very important to actually explain terminologies or terms, because we are working with a community of tech stack that's usually change, especially Microsoft, and names can change multiple times within a year, and so it's very important. Okay, what is it? Even sometimes the spellings, the way you have Copilot. For example, in Copilot you have, is it big C and every other capital letter C and every other thing small letter, or is this C O and start with big P, capital letter P, those kind of stuff. So and that's why it's also important to actually enumerate or clarify these terms. So in this case, it's APIM, and it's very, very much related to API Gateway, but its API Gateway is a subset of APIM. Its APIM is the entire suite, and it works. It uses API Gateway inside of it to be able to be a gate to your APIs, okay, and protect your backend services. But in layman terms, the best way I can explain it is think of it like a front desk for your digital services, okay? And these digital services are like Power Platform, are like your custom applications, your financial applications, your banking applications, okay? The reason why we pick Power Platform is because that is what is relatable in this community, especially for this platform MVP corner. We looking at towards things to improve Power Platform implementations, so, but these services actually that can be protected by APIM is not only Power Platform. So it's not a Power Platform thing, okay? So it can be a normal desktop application, a normal web app, a normal something hosted in app service, okay? And anyway, as long as it's web and APIM can, what's it called, can protect it. So as long as it's even public URLs, okay, and that's a JSON that can be imported into APIM, and you can just have it there, and it's going to work for you, okay? So the idea is when different apps or users want to access your data or features, they come through APIM. Or what does it do? It's like a gate man, okay? It checks who they are, decides what they can do, and keeps track of how everything is used. Nothing more, okay? So it's like, who are you? Okay, do you have this subscription key, and what can you do on this? Yes, I know you. Authentication is who you are, right? Then authorization is what can you do, and they keep track of how everything is used, so you can see how many times this person comes in, hits this API. So things that as a function typically, or your web API itself does not really care about, because at the end of the day you want to isolate activities and do things like single responsibility, so that a single service does not do more than what it's supposed to do. So ideally, you wouldn't build all these kind of things inside the Azure functions or inside any authentication provider to say, oh, how many times did this person? Maybe you can have small set of service built in it to say, hey, we want to see, did this guy access this? Yeah, you can see this in probably in application insights, if you use log analytics and all those kind of stuff. But in terms of actually saying, okay, what do you want to do with this data? Do you want to block somebody that comes in 10 times within a second? That's rate limiting. Do you want to say, okay, this person should not do this more than this? And let's say you will have business, a subscription business, and you want to classify subscribers, okay, more than based on their maybe the amount they pay, and you want to say this guy can eat these things 10 times, this other guy is 20 times, and all those kind of stuff. So APIM can help you. It all depends on how much of the policies you are willing to what's called tweak, because it's all about policies. Okay, and there's one good scenario or case study that APIM is also that shines in is Open API. Okay, so you have Open APIs. For example, if you have APIs like, for example, most of us here are familiar with Paystack, or even PayPal. But why I use Paystack is because we already know that Paystack is an API product, the API product-based company today. It's API-first company. Okay, so for the site creating the storefront and everything, but we know them to be payment integrator, payment processors. And if you look at their website, you see that the website, the developer documentation, right there you can test APIs, you can test things, and even you have test key. What you can do in test, even what you can do in live. What the backend service that are being hit behind is different when you are using a test account. It's actually going to go into fake things, test bank account. You receive test emails, all those kind of stuff. So APIM can expose such a portal. They call it developer portal, that can allow you to It can allow you to specify those kind of functionalities. So you have developer portals that you can publish your products as a provider of API, and from there you can use all these products. Your consumers can use this product, and they wouldn't even know they're interacting with the backend services like Azure Functions or even Power Platform in this case. So you see where Power Platform looks far. So it's going to be Power Platform as the main database, the Azure Function there. Then your APIM is, rather than even exposing Azure Functions as normal URL, which will show welcome to Azure Functions, right? You know the ugly Azure Functions this thing. Okay, that your Azure Function is up and running. Then you have the URL for API for which you can use in Postman and things like that. So API can give you a very beautiful interface, rather, to say welcome, blah blah blah. You know, this kind of stuff. They have links of products where you can click on the product and say, okay, you want to use this one. You can even test on it. Okay, so these are some of those things. So basically, there's nothing much of it other than to say it's just a phone desk for digital services. So that's going to be the first person you meet, first thing that hits you when you call the service, and it's going to interact with you and tells you probably even everything is depends on how much of knowledge of the policies you are willing to go for and things like that. But basically, you can do much more than even you can think of. It's in the portal, it's in the CLI, even REST API. You can interact with the management plane of API, even via REST API. Okay, that's, you can even configure API based on REST API. So that means it can be done on the fly, this kind of stuff, or based on conditions. Okay, so let me check one diagram from Microsoft. Okay, so this diagram is, I was building my diagram before in Canva, and to try to explain, like I usually do in my sessions, to try to simplify what exactly is APIM, right, and how it relates to Power Platform. But my diagram was actually Power Platform and things like that. But I said, okay, if you have this kind of diagram already from the icons from Microsoft, okay, so it's better to just use this like that. Okay, I hope it's clear enough and not too stretched, because it's actually a very late decision. So, but the point is that these app developers, this API, this particular diagram shows API in the middle. Okay, you can see the developer portal, you can see the API management plane, and you can see the gateway. And you can see what's happening. Everyone is interacting differently with it. So you have the app developers that are interacting with the developer portal. This is showing everything that has been done on the API management plane side and the data plane side. Can you see? So the app developers will have a very friendly, shareable, how will I put it, abstracted web portal to interact with. That is, these are your consumers. These are your third parties. These are your partners. These are your customers. They have this portal to use. Okay. And but you as the API providers have the management plane to use. And in this management plane, you have so what you can do here is basically very, very different kind of stuff. Okay. And for example, you can define how you want your how you want your, because like we said, the API gateway is like a facade for the backend API. So this is where you do all the configurations of your API, all those policies kind of things, and all of those things. So it's basically how you define it in this place. Why the developer portal is something that the developers use to define it, to call it, to interact with it, and everything. Okay, so that's the idea for it. So one thing you can do with developer portal is that you can sign up for access and get API keys. You know, those kind of, those subscripted portal where you don't even need to call anybody, any technical person to help you to set it up. Those kind of things. This is what APIM gives you. So you need to build it yourself. So when you have it, you can generate the developer portal by itself, the default one if you like. And if you are very good with WordPress and CSS, HTML, you can do wonders with it. Okay, so that's basically what you can see with this. And the management plane, like I said, allows you to control, to determine how all things work together. Like, okay, you want to control it, you want to do policies and all of those things. So that's where you have this thing for. Any question about that? That is about APIM basically. So okay, so what else? Okay, so this is the idea. Okay, so once requests come in, it moves and it gets into the. But another diagram that is very, very important that I will show you that can help you understand this is that. But the basic thing I want you to understand from this diagram, this particular stage, is that API management is a combination of these three things. That's the developer portal. That's an API management plane. This is where you guys. This is where you do your API providers. This is JSON. This is what is going to be transformed into all these things. This is what's going to be used to do all those kind of things. So we have the microservices and the actual data that is being exposed and all of those things. That's it. And this one is the interactions with it. And these are people that can interact with, even on devices, right? Anywhere. And they talk with the developer. This one's to talk to developer portals. This one interact with the, these actual employees actually interact with these ones because of course they can't go through this place. Okay. So that's the abstract upscale. So so you abstract your website, you secure it, you evolve it, it evolves. So you can see monetize. That's what I was saying about subscription base. So in that portal there, you can put different kind of pricing plan and open it based on. So it allows you to build a subscription product. For those of you building MVPs, startups, and all these things, so APIM can allow you to do all these things because you can do all these kind of policy things based on different conditions. Okay. Good. So so for this one, so we will now start talking about some of the. Okay. Someone asked a question. Your hand is up. Yeah, sure. Toyib, go ahead. Do you want to take that question now, Ahmed? I see that Toyib has his hand up.
Yeah, sorry. I was struggling to like unmute myself earlier. Good morning, everyone. I have a question regarding the previous slide you actually shared. So I joined a bit late, but I think I kind of understand what you are trying to say. But I have a question, right? So please, can you go back to your previous slide? Yeah. So are you saying from this, if I understand this architecture very well, that let's say, for example, right, I've got my Dataverse, right? And I want to give people access to my Dataverse API. Are you saying with this API management, I can have a portal whereby data from my Dataverse can be accessed through the APIM using this kind of setup, right?
Yes,
Oh,
that's correct. And that's exactly what this whole session is about too.
oh, okay, cool.
Yeah,
All right.
and the next diagram will also explain how that works.
Oh, okay. I'll yield for now so I can ask my other questions later.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Yep. Okay, so very good question. And it actually points us in the right direction. It kind of tells me or signals to me that definitely everyone understands that we are on the same page, and everyone understands the whole essence and the end point, the end goal of this particular setup. So that first setup shows you that the APIM inside of it and all of those things. Okay, this one is an enterprise integration architecture, which is possibilities, that you can achieve in that most one of those reference architecture I would say that you can use to in using in organizations, okay, and that works very well, time tested. So in this case now you have API management in the middle, you have logic apps as an orchestration application, then you have your backend systems, Azure services, SaaS services, web services, REST and SOAP. Okay, so even though I like to do question and answer, like who knows this and all, but I'm not going to ask. I wanted to ask before that who can tell me which of this line, which of this what's it called, stage or plane, which one, where will Dataverse fall on this diagram? Is it going to be on the left or on the right, or is it going to be in the middle? Okay, if you look at this diagram now, you see that the Dataverse in this case is going to fall in the what? On the right hand side. Okay, that's in the backend systems. Okay, why the workflow and orchestration in this case will be Azure Functions will be there, and the API management still stays, and the left side still stays. Okay, so our consumers are still there, HTTP is still there. However, the API management is also still there, API gateway. But in this case, we will have the Azure function in the middle to be the workflow, to start it up, to not expose the actual Dataverse APIs, like what's it called? Those create, read, and all of those things, right? You can put those ones. You call those ones from the Azure functions using the managed identity thing we spoke about the last time. Don't forget that you can actually use that to authenticate the. So you kind of see that this section is the sections that we had is connected. So if you are calling Dataverse from Azure function, which is what we did last time, use managed identity to call that one. Okay. Then this session, you are saying, okay, even that Azure function, okay, which I mentioned when I started, that's enough. You can actually, especially when you are building internal applications, you have Azure functions and it comes with an API URL rather. And other applications in my organizations are able to call it. And it's well managed. They pass in their OAuth, and my Azure function is talking to Dataverse via managed identity. Awesome, beautiful architecture. Okay. So API now does what for you? It says, okay, this API is in Azure function. For example, the Azure function is a function app, and there are different functions. Not all the functions are talking to Dataverse. Number one, yeah, some functions are talking to Dataverse, and we want to bring in some extra security into it, rate limiting, to detect how many people is being called, is it secured, all this kind of stuff, to get some kind of report and all of those things. Okay, then even more again, now we are taking the applications beyond our organization. It's now into the public. Things are getting serious. And you want to expose, you want people to hit your Azure function, you have to do everything. You have to think twice about that. Is it possible? Of course. Is it being done by people? Absolutely. This is our API URL. Of course, it's very, very good. But most times when you see those API URL and you hit it, or you're able to do some slash, and so although some people can do all these things to, like all this forwarding, the same thing API gateway and all these things do. Some people build it custom. Don't get me wrong. Of course, before APIM and people can build all these things. You can get those functions, that URL. You can mask it behind another app service URL. You can do a custom URL that does the forwarding, do some DNS, what's it called? A record, C record thing that have your subdomain, you know, this kind of stuff. But you can actually do all those things yourself, but it takes time to build. You might be leaving out some extra features and those things, and there's no, and probably you're not even as very, you know, informed as a whole team of people at Microsoft that are trying to, whose specialization and what they spend their time on is making sure that those kind of products, these kind of features to meet industry standard and the kind of threats that are out there, the kind of things that the customers are asking for. The customer needs are evolving every day. So this is where the question that you asked the first time it falls in. So you have your backend system at Dataverse in this case. The APIM comes in the middle, but the APIM itself is also talking to what's it called? The Azure Functions. In this case, they put logic apps, but the Azure Function, and then the authentications come from Microsoft Entra ID, which is internal. In cases like this, it is internal. Okay, and if it's external to, yeah, it's good. You see that the external one is going to consume API documentation, create application. Okay, then Microsoft Entra. So the create app is also like it's also like saying app registration. Okay, so and at the end of the day, the Microsoft Entra. Don't forget that Entra is like the central Microsoft authentication system, okay, and authorization system. And when it does this, it comes down to the API management, which we already have interfaces published, okay? And those interfaces that we publish are shown on the developer portal. This is what the consumers or developers will interact with. It hits back our Azure functions, and anything that we are doing inside the Azure functions can, what's it called, interact, can hit our Dataverse system. So this is where Dataverse comes into play in this case. Okay. So that's it, and we would just take some. We had a demo before to show 5 to 10 minutes of left to right of published, already published and set up architecture like this, but we would be able to just show how the API team works in Azure portal. But if you have any question, this is the right time to ask before we start talking about the portal, you know. And one question, is there anybody on this call that has used APIM before? Or have seen, not use yourself, but has seen it deployed? If you've seen it deployed. No. Is it that new? Or is it that obscure or something? What's really happening? What's the issue with it? Nobody. Okay.
Yeah, somebody said she has used it before.
Okay. Okay. Yes, okay. Nice. So now let's just see what's some of the possibilities here. In this place, I'm going to share my screen. No, I don't want to share this one. Let me see if I can share this. Can you see this one? This has a function.
Yes, I can see your slide still.
My slide. Why my slide? No, that should not be. Why is this showing my slide? So let me see. Are you seeing my slide now, or is no more sharing?
It's not much sharing anything. You can share, right? We can't hear you anymore, Habib. Seems you're muted.
So is it sharing now?
Yeah.
Can you see the Azure
your
function?
yeah,
Azure function,
correct.
right? Okay, perfect. So you can see that this is my Azure function that I created. Okay, and but this is the to have what's it called? So it feels good that a lot of people are familiar with this. Okay, and basically gives some kind of meaning that it's not all that basic things. Can you see my Azure portal too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, see.
Okay, so now this is Azure function, which is very, very nice, right? And in my Azure functions, let's make some assumptions, okay? In my Azure function, I'm calling web APIs. I'm calling Dataverse web APIs, okay? Just like the one that he was asking about. I'm calling Dataverse web APIs. I'm using the manage identity one we talked about the last time. And I am also, what's it called? I'm also probably saying that, okay, in my web API, in my Azure functions, please don't do more than updates. I'm creating accounts, okay, for Power Platform. Power Platform, people that are Power Platform familiar, familiar with PPA. So it's basically, we can do all these things, create account, delete account, and all of those things, okay? So, but another thing is that we also do not want to eat those people with what's it called, with all of these APIs and telling them that, oh, the name of database is create, in database you use create, if you want to update, you use update, you have to send all these things, those kind of things that you have with database. Okay, but we say, okay, we abstracted those ones in Azure Functions, but we still have the URL of Azure Functions. We still have people calling API URLs and things like that. But we want them to be able to have a portal that's probably they can click on, they can see the results instantly. So the result that you have from Azure Function will be relayed. From the result that Azure Function has from the Dataverse is being returned via Azure Function, right? Just like when you go to Postman, you see the results. This time it's going to be shown in the portal, like in the developer portal, for example, if you are using APIM. But APIM is also beyond developer portal. That's not the only thing you should use it for. Even the fact that people are hitting it only directly, okay, is enough to give you those things. But the first thing I want you to show is that you see this guy. I created this one this morning, okay, and it's pretty straightforward that you can always create it yourself via CLI or anything, okay. But the point is that if you want to create from Azure Portal, it's basically the same way like I did here. How do we create it? Let's see what we have. Maybe okay. Okay, let's go this way. APIM, 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 APIM. API management service. Okay, you can see I have one, and I have a basic V2. If you want to test this basic V2, Microsoft has told us that this one is very, very fast. Is kind of the most economical if you are testing. So, and I don't know why it was not the default when you are trying to create new ones. Okay, you have the standard V2 one. So, but just know that if you want to test and you don't want to be surprised about your credits, it's better to do this. Okay, so But the point is that the same way we create every other resource in Azure is what you have is confusion, resource group, you type your resource name, the name of your APIM, okay? The organization name, because you have, it can be Contoso, it can be Avanade, it can be anything. Then the email of the person that is managing this API, okay? And so for one, ideally you have one service, one API. Then those APIs have multiple products, okay? Or you have this and you have APIs in it. Okay, but usually when you are enterprise, you have this one for a collection of products that you have, and another service for another set of APIs that you have, set of products that you have, So there's nothing much to talk about here actually, because it's quite basic. The only thing I wanted to point out is that if you want to test, and you should just make sure that you have this kind of setup around there. Okay, I don't think there's anything that has to do with anything special to maybe infrastructure wise, no virtual networks, of course, managed identity. This managed identity is like if APIM is talking to something else, for example, and you want it to use its own managed identity, okay, to grant this particular resource. So it's outbound actually. Okay, so if you want to make APIM as its own, you want it to have its own identity so that it can use that identity to communicate. Yeah, so that's basically it. If you want to create anything, you just fill out all these things. And I already have one already, so there's no point. This is the URL of the one you have. Okay, resource not found. I don't have anything here. This is my gateway URL. And it is online, yes. And you can see the pricing tier. Everything is created. API, I have one API because these are my APIs on the left. Okay, this is my developer portal that I was talking about. Has not been published. The default is that it's not going to be published, okay? And it's an automatically generated, fully customizable website that documents your API. You can see. So these things that some products, some APIs have, that you go to the website, you see all the APIs, that you can use it online. Some of them use API. Okay, so if I publish, yes, let's see what you have. Okay, what's happening? I'm expecting it to give me a link to why is it not? Can you see now? Enable this one, right? Okay. I think it makes sense that they make it disabled by default because of resources. Is this thing enabling? Okay, it takes some time.
Yeah, I think there's a quick questions here. So one is asking if you can create a Swagger file for API with API management.
Swagger file. I think yes. I've not tried it, but I think yes. Swagger file. Well, yeah, you can create a JSON file for APIs. You can generate Swagger file. I think yes. So if you import JSON, yeah. Okay, very good question, and we will check to see. But yes, I think so. But though I've not really tried that that feature, but I think it's possible to import JSON and have it build some kind of what's it called? Oh, it's Swagger based on Open API. It's Open API protocol, So in this case, we have a developer portal, and let's see if it's not published. Okay, yeah, I already saved now. So okay, Save, right? What is it saying? Saved. So it's really enabled. You can now access any device, but okay. Thank you. So can I leave there? Can I leave there? Okay, now I can click on developer portal. Okay, you can see this is the portal introducing improved developer blah 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 and API. If you're interested in these things, next. Yeah, show me the portal. Wow, we have a beautiful portal. Okay, this is our portal. I didn't do anything. I didn't have to create any CSS or HTML, but you have this portal. This is APIs. This is the page. Okay, so these are basic page and all these things. View as guests, view as developers. Yeah, we have 3 people. You can be the administrators, for example. You can be guests. Guests are people that are not logged in, that don't have the authentications that you require. So maybe they can just view some APIs, or maybe they can just see the documentations, but they cannot test. You know, those kind of features that you have on the, in all these popular websites, API product, SaaS, all those SaaS websites. So, and so we can do some things here. You can see that it's allowing me to edit picture. I can put another picture, more like a CMS, a content management solution, okay, which I can do all these things and stuff like this. And another thing is that, where's the next can be, you know, we can see how it behaves on anything. Okay, so in these APIs, you can actually see Explore API. You know, if you have APIs in your distro now, you can see it. You can see those things. Let me say view as guest, right? And I'm here. So pages, all this one, they are CMS things. It's not going to show on the actual website. Okay, so edit buttons. You can do anything that you want here. So I think it makes sense if you ask me. Close, publish sites. Okay, so what else do we want to check? This one. This is the actual URL. All these ones are just editors. So this is how it's going to appear if you are not building anything, if you are not customizing it. So all those APIs that you have will be here. No API to display. You see why? Because I'm not signed in. Applications have to sign in. Yes, log my password. So what kind of sign in? Just basically your what's it called? Or you just have sign up. Okay, and people can sign up here too. Have the username and password. And once they sign up, you know, there's a lot of things you can do. So everything that is probably I can say some people use it internally too, but you know, it's best suited for external, and people can. I've seen it used internally very well from across departments. Administrators, developers don't want to receive requests every time about people calling their APIs, and they just automate all these things with APIM. Okay, and Azure Functions or even Logic Apps can be abstracted further and say, okay, what is behind is actually Logic Apps, so Azure Functions, but API makes it more expository and makes sense, more cool, I would say, to in terms of the UI part of it. But the major part of APIs that APIM that is even very interesting is let's go to the APIs. See that you have a lot of things here. Can you see all this stuff? You have MCP server. For those of you that is in preview, you see, I've not really tried anything about that one. But I imported one API today. I have my Azure functions here, and you can see all these things. inbound processing. I can decide to put policies, which is the most important thing about API, and to add policies. But how do you even import APIs? You can add an API, and if you want to add a new API, okay, you can do it from this open API. You can do all these many methods. Your source files can come from any of these places. Language model, GraphQL, people doing open source, a lot of understand this. Logic app, okay, I can select my logical container app because all this one is created from Azure resource. Okay, so in my case, when I wanted to import this one, I just clicked on function app. And I like the fact that it doesn't ask me to put the URL of the function app or the name or whatever. It says I can browse. Okay, and when I browse, I can see all my Azure functions. If I click on the first one I did was this one, right? So I click on this one, for example, or open telemetry test. Okay, so it didn't even find any other functions here. But if I click on this one, I see one for Azure functions to add. Okay, so order notification function. So I select it. So it tells me that the name will be this, and the display name will be this. If I have Dataverse and I'm creating customers or leads from the website, okay, and I'm giving it out to the WordPress developers to call my lead, okay, I can put it as this. The suffix will be CRM lead, okay. So this is what they see. They don't even know anything that's happening, whether it's Dataverse. They don't even know if it's what's it called? It's Azure functions or logical behind. They don't care. So I can just put it like this. I can call this one create CRM lead, for example. This guy is by changing my name. Okay, so you have this, yeah, something like that. Okay, so I have all this. So this guy is actually my function. Inside my function, I'm talking to the Dataverse. I'm talking to a bunch of applications and the consumers don't care about it. All I want is that I've published it here and I can add things to say inbound processing, outbound processing. What happens when the request comes in, and what happens outside the request when the request is going out. This is an opportunity for us to. This is a service that allows us to make some configurations and policies. Okay, so you can suggest to add policies. Some of the common ones are these ones. IP address. Do you want to filter IP address? More responses? You want to set query parameters? You want to set headers? You know, these are common middleware things that people do for inbound policies. Okay, so now you see all these things now. Imagine you want to be building all these things yourself, custom, but you have it in APIM. So you can actually click this one from here and say, okay, allowed IPs. You can do it from here. Okay, you can add IP filter from this, so it's not going to allow to join. Don't forget that you can do all these things too in VNet and what's it called, Azure firewalls and all those things where you have the FAQ. You can use a fully qualified domain name, but this is when you're building something web API, and in terms of maybe in this particular case, Dataverse. You understand? So, and everything is going to be behind it. I can set up all these policies. It allows you to set all the policies like this. Okay, so this is the policies for this operation. SCAD. Okay, you can go back, and I have this is base set backend services. So you can keep adding policies as you want, if you like other policies, and if you want, you can do other policies. In this policy, you start generating. This is a different kind of thing that you can always use Copilot for, or even the Microsoft Learn. It now depends on how much of knowledge of policies you have. Okay, that's if you need to set up those policies by default. Otherwise, you can use the ones that are there. But in most cases, you need to set up some policies, and maybe you want to try something specific things that you don't want to happen in your backend. You can put it here. So that's basically what the Azure APIM gives you. You control things by policies, okay, and abstract APIs. And by way of that, you are abstracting and securing and governing your applications from the outside world. So that's all from my side in terms of this section. As far as this particular section is concerned, if you have any questions, please let me know and we can check. Yes, sir. Please.
Yeah, thank you, Habib. Okay, I think we have a question from.
Okay. Thanks, Habib. For the session, right? I've got a question. Please, the other function app. Can I just see the makeup of that? The function app you created before now? Yeah, that one.
This one, Abi?
Yeah.
You want to see the resource?
Yeah.
In Azure Portal, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Let me see. Where is it? Where is this one? This one, right?
Yeah. So because I have I'm taking this one, I have a question, right? So because currently, right, I've been dragged to a project that ordinarily it's not for me. So we are my organization, right? We are trying to do some sort of a data warehouse. So they are trying to we are trying to move all the app across our organization to a central hub. So for my team, right? Because what I do mainly is around just Power Platform. So there is now a need for, we use Power Platform a lot. Like most of our application are on our Power Platform. We use Power Pages and the rest of it. So we are now trying to, so it's now time for them to like all the data from Dataverse. We are trying to now move it to, we want to like be pushing it to that data warehouse as well. So the approach I was before now, because to be honest, I haven't, not before the session, I don't have an idea of what APIM does. So my initial approach was for me to give them access to those API. They'll just, the way I would, how do I put this? I'll register an app and all of this, just make a Dataverse API available to them. So I was thinking of just like for each of those different endpoints they will need, I was just going to give them that as an individual API. For example, they're trying to get a record from my incident, which is case. I'll give them that API separately and some other endpoints they may need. But with this, I think it makes a lot of sense if I go through this approach of using this API, and then I'll just enable all those different endpoints they will need on that portal. But my question now is, where does this function app you've created comes in? What is the purpose of this function app?
Okay, good question. The thing is that APIM is like it's like a facade. It's like a facade behind the web API itself. So when you have yeah, okay, are you with me?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Okay, so the idea is that if you have Azure functions, for example, when you put an Azure function into API, the function does not move or change. It's exactly where it is. It is running inside your function. All the services that you have, it's inside the function.
Okay.
All the actions that you want to do in your application still remains inside the Azure function. So, but what happens is that instead of the client calling the Azure function directly through its original function URL, they start calling an APIM. They start going through APIM. So APIM has its own URL. It's like a forwarder. Behind APIM, it uses what we call traffic manager, kind of. Okay. You know, all of these services are layered by layer, just like Azure Functions by backend uses app services. App service itself also uses all those kind of stuff. At the end of the day, it hits the hardware and all. But the point is like an abstraction where you can set up something that is more beautiful, that is more not as technical as its Azure function will be. Okay, that is beyond just using APIs via post and everything. So, but if your question is that why do we still need function app? Okay, is that the reason why we need function app is that if you want to expose, ordinarily, if you want to expose the Dataverse web API, how would you have exposed it in the first place? Is that so, okay?
Yeah,
go ahead.
Okay, so what I would have just done normally is I'll register an app on Azure, use my set my client ID and the rest of them. Then wherever endpoint I get during all those processes, I just go ahead to Postman to test it. If for example, if I'm trying to do a get, if I put, for example, I'm trying to get a lead, right? If I put the API for the lead, then I set all those parameter I've set, right? Postman, I'll just be able to get all those things. So that is how I would have, that is, if before now, that is simply what I would have just done. I'll just expose all those API, then I'll be giving it to them. Now, for example, if they want the one for lead, I give it to them. If they want the one for incident, I give it to them.
So now, in this particular scenario, do they want to do anything else to the APIs, to the data? Like, is it just once they want to, they're not doing anything other than what CRM provides?
Yeah, they're not doing anything other than what CRM provides.
Well, I would still say you should put something in between.
Okay.
This is like the best practice, okay? But of course, if you can import Dataverse API URL, the schema, and all of those things, of course you can use it APIM. But I just can't see how that will really function. You understand what I mean? Like in terms of that kind of exposure directly via it. But of course, usually Azure Functions or Logic App is when they say you want to do, you're not exposing the entire database, because no one's about database that you cannot actually say that this is the functions that they can call, that they can see. You understand? So once they have, the only thing you can use to control it is that by security rules, of course. But they will know the function names, they can call it, they can do all these things, just that it will be forbidden. You understand? So, but if you have Azure functions wrapped in it, you can just build functions specifically for the actions that you want. There are many thousands of tables on Dataverse. Maybe it's just 2 tables, maybe, or 4, and you have functions that say create and deploy, whatever. But in most cases, most times, when external applications call Dataverse, there's always something that they are doing different from what a normal user would do. But if in this case they're just doing the same thing, then I would still say you should wrap it up in something that is like an Azure function or what's it called, or Web API, or this thing, or Azure Logic Apps.
Yeah, thank you, Habib, for that. Yeah. Yeah, and in addition to add to that as well, like I think so if you have asked about the getting the what's behind the function or something like that, Yeah, of course, normally you have your function, right? To when you create a function, your function code, and you wanted to perform some certain actions on tasks within Dataverse as well. So what Habib is trying to talk about is that with the API management, how do you now call your function API without exposing your function app and endpoint, right? So if you use API management, you can be able to call the API management that the URL that the API management is providing to you, right, and call it the endpoint directly for there. So from API management, you can configure different type of policies to protect your function endpoint, and then including the IPs, and even though the IPs now you can configure that directly on the app function app itself. But if another way to apply some policies around protecting your function app, you can be able to do that using the through the API management as well. I think there's a question here for you. So normally I configure my API's response in the API response if policies created in API management blocks an API call due to bespoke APM policies, would it be possible to configure responses so that the output of an API call managed by APM flows into the response and even using the normal response code? That's a question for you, right?
Wow, very good. So, of course, that is much possible, and it's actually has to do with what you're going to put inside of this place. Okay, so it basically is that, okay, you want to intercept responses, outbound responses. Okay, so if policies created an API blocks an API call, okay, I will be possible to configure response so that the output of an API call managed by APM flows to the response, and even using the non-response code so that the end user knows what you're dealing with. Yes, of course. You can. So, but actually, if APM, what happens when APM blocks something, you can actually configure it in your policies. Yeah, outbound policies on error. Can you see? So there are all these stuffs. So I think maybe I don't know how I can share I'll look for, well, maybe you can check online, but there's a very good explanation on. I think I remember this session, this site. This is the best place to learn about APIM. Let me just bring it out on this APIM love. I don't know if anyone of you know APIM love. APIM love. Even me myself, I was binging on this when I was implementing implementing APIM.
Good, Barracks, do you still have a question? I think you're trying to raise your
I
hand.
think it's a very good question, actually. Yeah, makes sense to you. Because that's the whole idea, intercept response, outbound policies, and when the response is going back from your own Azure functions, and you have, or let's say the API blocks it due to the policy thing. Yeah, you have the ability to determine what kind of response, is actually, because of course, if it's rejected, that is where you have the you put in the tag that will tell you the kind of response you want the users to see. Okay, not just generic, impossible, or anything. You add your own custom message to it.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Can I? Yeah, I just wanted to expand on that. So just thank you very much for this eye opener. Honestly, I've never thought of managing I've been putting an abstraction on the API, for any other project, because for me, whatever comes from the API is what we get. The best you can do is to use some logic outside of output to the user. For example, you are sending an email as a response. You probably want to just anticipate all the responses and code all your, put the conditions in your own way. But with the APIM, looks like you can do a lot of that, to get away from that. So thank you very much for this session. Like you said, sharing that the blog would be a way to learn from this. I wouldn't want to ask all the questions. I'm sure all the answers are already on the internet. But this few minutes we've spent has been a very big help. And thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So, and that's actually the idea of this session, because I was telling Ahmed before down that the demo I planned, which is a recorded demo and it show, has all the stuff, but even that one would never cover 1/10 of the scenarios out there that everyone will have. But the idea of this kind of session is to expose us to the possibilities that we have when we are building all of these things. And one thing I wanted to check also is also on that page is the tiers, the application tier. That's the SKUs that so that for each tier you know which one is best. I already told you the best one for your demos and tests, but in case you are going to production, you should also check those Microsoft tier, because usually updated sometimes, so you can know how much of usage you're going to be using and the impact on your budget or your credits in Azure. So that's it. Okay, so more questions before we round up from your side, Ahmed?
Yeah, just trying to see if there's question. I think we don't have any question for now. Yeah, just somebody's trying to ask question. I think so.
Very, very
Okay.
important.
Right. Okay, not a question. So thanks so much, Habib, for your time, because we are over time already. And then yes, this section is recorded, so it's going to be available. I'm going to give it to you and drop it on the group chat, and also you can also find it on our LinkedIn as well. Yeah. No question for now. Habib, do you want to wrap up or something?
Let me see if I have one more slide. Let me see if I have one more slide. The usual slide, very maybe which of the slide are you seeing my slide now?
No.
Or T as a function?
So APIM, yeah.
Sorry, I just have to always hear this. But there's nothing much actually, just to show you that we this one is okay, but now you can see my architecture right back. Okay, so that's all. The last thing is just to thank you for joining the session. I always like to join. So if you have any community stuff, of course, maybe you want me to speak, you can actually reach out to me, or we can DM talk on ideas and do a one-on-one interaction on what is possible, anything about this Azure stack, especially with Power Platform. Okay, and you can always, let's connect on LinkedIn. I'm open to meeting every one of you. If you are not connected, then please check out my blog, blog.avidiaku.com, Azure for Developers newsletter. I try to write every week, but at least most I write every 2 weeks. That's if I'm not too consumed in my normal 9 to 5, right? So, but yeah, it's a community I'm also trying to build to get bigger and focus on the development side of Azure. Azure is very big, and I'm trying to create this path and chart a way forward for developers that are interested in Azure, because it is a huge lot of potential ahead based on the plan for that Microsoft has got. So thank you so much. Feel free to connect with me and with each other, and see you in the next one.